Hey, welcome back to the channel. As you guys already saw the preview, we are going to be talking about that design because we are going through the Olympics. And even though I am not participating, because I'm right here, I am talking about the museum. And this is part 2, right? So if you haven't seen part 1, it's right there. You guys can click on that and see that. But this is part 2 of the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Museum that is located in Colorado Springs. Now, part 1 was mainly around the museum. This part 2 is going to be about what you guys just saw in the preview. So let's get right to that. We're going to be focusing on the street to the entrance of the museum, and eventually they will build more stuff around this area. So that's one of those things that you probably will see. There's some areas that are a bit more open space, a bit more abandoned. They're not. They're just going to build more stuff in the future. That being said, let's get started with what's going on here. So let's talk a little bit about what's going on as far as the design. So the design is going to be similar to what we saw on the actual museum and in that area, which is going to be very modern, very geometrical, a lot of lines going on. And the same goes for the landscape in this section. So speaking of those areas that would be on the sidewalks, because that's mainly where you have all the landscape, they have some gaps in between of different materials. There's more on the wood mulch and also decorative rock. The decorative rock is going to be on the same size as the one that we talked about last time, which is going to be more of an 1.5 inch size of rock, and it will change from that to a bit smaller, maybe 3/4 inch, and it's going to stay on the cool grays black colors. Now this is on purpose because they have this sort of theme color going on as far as the overall design of the building, but also the hardscape, which we're going to talk about that in just a bit. So let's talk about the spaces in between those materials. They're only about 3 to 4 feet, and it does change a little bit in some of those areas, specifically talking about some of the rocks versus some of the wood mulch. So some of them are going to be about 3, some are going to be a bit larger, especially where you have some of those seating areas. Now, this is going to be some of those things that I want to talk about, but it's going to be kind of hard for you to find those things, those sort of nice and smooth egg-looking type of seating. Yeah, you may like them. I actually don't know where those came from, so I might have to kind of look into that. However, if you yourself know where those come from or where you can get them, maybe put them in the comments, and that way I can know and others can know as well if they decide to purchase this type of thing. So now that we got that out of the way, let's talk a little bit about the shrubs and trees and all that good stuff. So let's look at my notes now that we're going to talk about it. So what I noticed is that they're using trees that are going to give you large canopies. Well, it means it's going to grow and the top is going to be quite big. So in the future, when this tree's mature, you're going to have some great shade, especially in the summertime. So talking about those trees, what I saw were the American lindens, some red oaks, and also some honey locusts, which I like to call them natural confetti because their leaves are very small, and it's more or less what it looks like, especially in the fall. Some people really like them, some people don't. So if you are into these trees, maybe you might want to get some of these ones. So that is mostly on the tree side of things. Now let's talk about some of the shrubs that I noticed in the area. There's not a ton of them going on, but the ones that they do use, they use them time and time again, which gives them a lot of that same colors that they're going for. So let's talk a little bit about those and what I saw. So among those, I noticed there's some cotonesters, some russet sages, some mugo pines, and those are going to be those little they look little for now because they're been only there for a couple months, so they look kind of small, but those are going to grow quite big, and they are evergreens, so they're going to stay like that once they start to grow nice and green the whole year. Also some Amsonia that also is gonna look really awesome. So those are some of the shrubs that I noticed in the area. Also some of the perennials. Now we talked last time about perennials, more like flowers. It was in the mix of the native grass they use. In this case, we are going to be talking more about those perennials. So the ones that I noticed were coneflowers, some mainnet salvias, some yellow yarrows, some kinnikinics, some geraniums, and some Susan buckeyes. So again, going back to the mixture of them, they did use quite a few coneflowers, and some of those will have different colors in their petals. So maybe something that you may want to use in your landscape. I think they're great. I really like them. The same goes for the kinnikinics. Now those are on the broad everleaf side of things, but they're gonna stay kind of low to the ground versus other types of, say, in this style. But if you want to use them, I actually do like those as well. It's a great combination to have a little bit of evergreen, and it will depend on where you are in your elevation. They generally like to be kind of on the low part, and they do like or tend to like more on the shade. So if you happen to have those conditions, maybe a good idea for you to use those. So that's going to be on those areas, but at the same time, there is some ornamental grasses in the area, and there's going to be plenty that you can use, and it's going to depend on your colors or the ones that you prefer, the height of them, maybe how wide you want them to grow, also how much space you have. But the ones that we see over here, the ones that I noticed were the grandma grasses, the blue stem, Korean feathers, and switch grasses. So there's a little bit of color, different sizes, even the blades themselves, how thick they are. Really cool stuff going on here. So again, I'm gonna show some pictures somewhere in this area. I don't know. Right here, right? That way you guys can see what they look like. Going back to what it is currently in this area. And at the same time, on the sides, you do have some rolled sod, and that's more specific to the area. Depending on where you are, you may want to use it, especially if you're in the area of Colorado, say the cities of Colorado Springs, Denver, Castle Rock, a little bit more north, Boulder. You have Greeley, you have Fort Collins, and the list goes on and on. Again, depends on where you are. You may want to switch up the grass, especially if you can't have this type of grass where you are. But Pikes Peak Blue, kind of what they're working with in this area. So that's going to be mostly on this type of things, which is more the plant, the trees, all of that good stuff. Now let's talk a little bit about the hardscape, which I sort of talked about last time, and I'm not going to go into too much detail because there is quite a bit of talk about this. So let's talk about the hardscape, specifically the pavers in the area where most people are going to walk and or drive on top. Now this, as I mentioned before, it is pavers, and the style that they were put together is going to be on the herringbone style, which looks more like a Z or an L. Kind of goes like this and kind of goes up like that. I'll put a picture somewhere here, that way you guys can see it. But this is a design that it definitely helps with the weight that you put on top of it. You know, the closer they are, the better they are to kind of keep it in place so nothing moves. Now, that being said, pavers are designed for them to shift with weight as opposed to concrete, where concrete is very solid, rigid, and if it gets either too cold or too hot, it'll expand and potentially crack. Pavers are meant for that area where they can move with the soil if it happens to need it, right? But at the same time, you definitely want to have the right materials, especially for the weight or the traffic that you're going to be having in those areas. So for that reason, they chose this, which I think looks great. But at the same time, if you notice from the footage, they use different colors. Not only colors, but also finishes. So here's are some of the ones that I noticed. There's a good chance that I might miss some of them, and those are specific to colors. And if you go to the website, in fact, I will say that the company that made this style of pavers are called Unilock, and I have spoken about them in the past. Great company, by the way. Really good materials, especially if you're thinking of something like this. Very modern, which I know many people like. So let's talk a little bit about the colors that I noticed there. So as far as those, the ones that I saw were more on the exposed granite types with the ice grays, the steel grays, the midnights, winter marble, among some of those colors. So there's quite a few that's going on here, and maybe at first glance they look a little similar, but if you notice, kind of stare down, you'll see there's some lighter grays, darker grays, almost white-like mixed infused in them, and some real dark ones, more like the midnight blacks that you kind of see on the sides, kind of more like on the marble type, more like black marbles in the area. Now those, because they're on the side, they're going to have more on the sort of straight lines, but as you kind of move into the area where they're going to be driving, that's where you have the herringbone, which is more like that, what I said earlier. Again, those are some of the materials that they use in this area, and of course they also use their concretes here and there in some areas. But this is more or less what they're working with in the area. What are your thoughts? Do you like any of this? Are you thinking of using any of this potentially for your own home? Let me know in the comments. I'd like to know what you guys are doing with your projects and how they are coming along. If you guys want to put your comments and let me know if you are thinking of using any of this materials. As I mentioned, I'm doing this video because of the Olympics. I am not there, but I am here with you guys talking about this area that I hope that if you haven't gone there already, maybe when you are in Colorado, maybe stop by and check it out. It's about an hour or so south of Denver, give or take, depending on traffic too, but it is a very nice area to see. Aside from the museum, you also have Pikes, which is in the background, and other areas that you can visit. But anyways, if you have the time to come and visit, at least to this location, I think you will enjoy it. At least I did. If you like any of this information, we would appreciate the likes and the subs. That way we know that we should be making more of these videos. And if you have maybe any ideas, maybe somewhere else that I should go and visit and talk about the landscape and the design, let me know. And in the meantime, take care of yourselves, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Have a good one. Bye.